Then we have this principle of slow in and slow out. So very often in real life, many movements start slow and then they gain speed and then they again slow down and stop. Okay, this gives an organic feel to the movement. So here you can see that there is this guy who is lifting this club up and he is bringing it down with some amount of force. So if I just animate it using these three keyframes, then the movement looks like this. This is just three keyframes. There is no slow in and slow out here. The timing or the distance or the number of frames between these three keyframes is the same. However, if I apply slow in and slow out, see what happens. You get this feeling of weight that he is actually lifting a heavy club and he is bringing it down with some force. And this is primarily done by drawing the in-between frames at intervals such that the initial motion seems slow and then the bringing down of the club is fast and it finally hits the ground and comes to a stop. Okay, so this principle of animation is very closely related to another principle of animation called timing that we'll also see. Here is a principle of animation called arcs, and this one is very simple. This just says that most of the movement that organic objects go through are not in straight lines but in arcs. So here you can see a walk cycle has been animated and you can see that the head makes an arc or the hip makes an arc, and this should give you an idea of why we studied all those curves, right? The Bezier curves, cubic splines, B-splines, other kinds of curves are very, very useful for animation, where you want to give the trajectory of various kinds of objects because they all naturally follow arcs, and the way to design these arcs or curves is using one of those curve formulations that we have studied. Here is another example. So you can see in the first example, it's a sheet of paper that is floating down and you can see that it is forming an arc, the path that the sheet of paper is taking. The second example is the tail of, say, a squirrel. As a squirrel is jumping or running forward, you can see that the tail follows a nice sequence of curves. Now we come to this principle of animation that I was talking about earlier called timing. And timing is usually determined by the number of frames that you put between two keyframes, because you will be animating at a fixed rate. So suppose you are animating at 30 frames per second and you put 10 frames between two keyframes, then the time difference between those two keyframes is just 1/3 of a second. However, if you put 60 frames between two keyframes, then the time difference between those two keyframes is 2 seconds. So different kind of movements have different kind of timings. So a nervous tick might be 2, whereas if you are trying to animate this phrase, come on, hurry, that sequence might be 5, while stretching of a sore neck may be at 10. So this 2, 5, 10, right, can be frames, or you can take them as relative units of whatever unit you are counting your time in. So here in the sketch, you see that there is this guy who's trying to do weightlifting, and when there is the lift is very slow, and then once there is the lift, then there is the jerk. In the jerk part, the weightlifter suddenly lifts the weight above their head, and that has got to be fast. So that is the difference in timing that you should be careful about. Then exaggeration is something that we are very familiar with. If you have seen any sort of cartoon animation, you will realize what I mean by exaggeration. So look at Tom and Jerry here. You have seen Tom chase Jerry maybe hundreds of times, and when Tom is just chasing Jerry, his body would tend to stretch in the direction of movement. Or when Tom is punching another cat, look at the way his body is stretching and the other cat has sort of bent into this nice concave shape. So when you do these exaggerations, they add realism and believability to the movement and they convey emotion to the audience. But you have to be careful when you do this, you have to do it correctly so that the audience feels engaged with your animation and the exaggeration does not feel out of place. Then there are the small things that make your animation come to life. So secondary action is one such principle. There is the primary actor that is doing some movement, but along with the primary actor, there are objects or other actors that interact with the primary actor, which might also have some movement. So here is a kitten putting herself to bed, sort of snuggling into a sheet or a quilt. And you can see that the pose of the kitten is important, but the animation of the pillow and the quilt is also equally important. So those are the small things. How do you animate the clothes? How do you animate the hair, the soft objects and so on that surround the primary character? And this is the principle of secondary action. And the final one is that you should always draw in perspective. So characters, again, they have volume and they have weight. And when you draw in perspective, remember that some sort of perspective foreshortening will apply. So in Mickey, you can see that one of the eyes is slightly smaller, giving a sense of perspective. There is some solidity to his body. Basically, you have to be aware that you are drawing a volumetric character and you are not drawing something that is made up of a flat sheet of cardboard, because that is not interesting at all. Okay. This is again something that will be automatically taken care of for you by your 3D rendering engine, because you will have a perspective camera, and that is why it is absolutely essential that you use a perspective camera to make your animation look more believable, because you see in perspective. But do set up the correct camera from the correct viewpoint direction and respect the principle of staging and all the other principles that we have talked about so far. How does all this lead to animation? So let us look at a sequence from this very beautifully animated film, The Beauty and the Beast, which is also a Walt Disney feature animation, and see what is the overall process in creating a scene in an animation of this sort. So first of all, there is a story pitch. So in a story pitch, the animators will sketch out some parts of the story very roughly and explain to their team what is the story that they're trying to animate. Then detailed model sheets of characters are developed where the main characters are drawn from various angles, and you not only fix the look of the character from various directions, you also fix what kind of color palettes you are going to use, what kind of clothes they are going to wear, and how they look from various directions. This is very important because animation is usually done by large teams, and it is very, very essential that everybody on that team has the same understanding of how a character looks under various lighting, in various kinds of garments, in various poses, so that the animation is consistent throughout or across the team. Then you block out the animation in a storyboard. So here you can see Beauty rushing down a staircase, jumping over the clock and the candle or the candelabra, and then just going out of this door, right? So there is a certain movement that the camera is following, and there is a certain movement that the characters are following, right? So both of these are pinned down in the storyboard. If you play back the storyboard as the frames of a movie, then that is called an animatic. So animatic is like an animated version of the storyboard. After all this planning is done, so remember, all this is planning. After all this planning is done, the actual animation frames are sketched by hand, where the backgrounds will be sketched separately, the characters will be sketched separately, then they will be composited together, and the result is that you get to see an animation that looks like this. So she rushes down the stairs, jumps over these two, and then goes out the door, right? Exactly how it was planned in the storyboard. So you can see even a small sequence like this takes a lot of planning. How about 3D characters? Well, the same principles apply. So I'll show you a very nice sequence from this movie called Ice Age by Blue Sky Studios. So remember this guy who is always after this acorn, right? So he's always trying to get hold of this nut. So look at the staging of this animation. You can see that the nut is the central thing, and that guy is going to try on the other cliff, is going to try and make a attempt at getting it. So here he is sort of coiling himself back. So in anticipation, you can already feel what is going to happen. It's like a spring winding, right? So this squash and stretch is going to feel, giving you a feel of what he is going to do. He's going to launch himself towards that acorn, and there he goes. So you can see as exaggeration, his body has been stretched a little bit, also to give you a feel of the motion blur, to give you an idea that he's traveling really fast. There he has made a jump for it. So now you can see that when he's going to pick up that acorn, they are going to show it a little slowly so that you get an idea of what is happening. So this is timing, and then it falls into water, and the secondary action is the movement of these bubbles that has been animated. So the primary action is this guy falling down, the secondary action are the bubbles going up. And then his feet are moving, he is slowly waddling around in water, that is overlapping action. And now you will see an example of him fighting these fishes, which is a frantic movement. So there is a lot of straight ahead animation that is happening. So you can see arcs, eyes are bulging out in these exaggerated arcs, and now he's going to fight off those fishes with some radical straight ahead animation, which is going to give you a sense of a fight that looks chaotic, but I'm sure it has been planned really well. But just to give you an idea of that, it was, it happened really fast. It has been done in this straight ahead manner. So here you can see that the same principles of animation apply to 3D characters. So the principles are really useful that way. How do you do a character animation? Well, a character in 3D, and we have already seen this, we have talked about this. A character in 3D is made up of a mesh, and the mesh has a skeleton made up of rigid bones inside. The mesh is called a skin, and the mesh is actually made up of a bunch of polygons that are connected together. So what you see is the texture mapped version of the skin. You on the screen, you never see the polygons themselves, and you don't really see the skeleton at all. Okay, you will see a shaded, colored, nicely textured, rendered version of the character on the screen always. And how is this character animated? You associate parts of the skin with the bones. You move the bones by changing the parameters of the transformation hierarchy that represents that skeleton. that reposes the bones, and when the bones move or the rigid links move, the part of the skin mesh that is related to those bones also moves. And you do this for every part, and you can make the keyframes by posing these bones manually at certain frames, and then the in-betweens can be generated by doing interpolation. This is known as keyframing. So you are going to do keyframing for your own animation. If you want to see a very fine example of manually keyframed animation, you can go and have a look at this film called Octopody, which you can see for free at octopody.com. The other very common way of posing that skeleton and animating it is by mimicking a performer, and this process is called motion capture. There are many examples of motion capture behind the scene videos that you can find on YouTube. So here I am showing you a screenshot from the filming of the movie Avatar, where this actress was motion captured and was used to animate this character in the movie. So you can see examples for various other films like Planet of the Apes, Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, and so many others, where motion capture has been used to animate both humanoid characters and other fantastical beasts. Please go and have a look at them, and that will give you an idea of how powerful a technique motion capture can be. This brings us to the end of this lecture about the principles of animation. We will continue our discussion of animation next by looking at some of the math behind all the interpolation that you need to do in order to perform keyframing and create animations. Thank you.